Welcome, everyone, to episode number 17 of Honey Radio. You're listening to Cat the Head Honey, and I have with me Jocelyn, the Hardcover Honey. Today we're talking to Ms. Barbie Wilde, who is best known for her role in HELLRAISER II. Now, Barbie is also a brilliant author in her own right, and we are super excited to welcome her here today to talk about HELLRAISER, her new upcoming projects, and her book, The Venus Complex. So, Barbie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for asking me.
And where are you calling in from?
I'm over in Europe. I'm sort of based between the UK and, I'm mostly based in London, England. That's where I moved to after I was kind of unsuccessful at Syracuse University. I wasn't unsuccessful, but I just thought to continue my interest in acting, I went to London as part of the Syracuse University drama program and just never went home. So
I think that sounds like a wonderful side effect.
Well, have you ever been to Syracuse, New York?
No, I haven't been to New York yet.
It's got sort of almost as rainy weather as Seattle.
Oh, I'm from Vancouver, so I understand that.
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, I'm originally from Trail, BC.
Oh, are you really? Oh my god.
Yep. I'm one of the few people that escaped.
Yeah, Trail's one of those little microcosms of little interior BC towns that people just kind of stay by accident.
Yeah. Well, no, it's funny because there's a big, wonderful thing happening with the horror scene in Vancouver with the Saska twins. And, I'm sort of friends on Facebook with Tristan Risk, who's in American Mary. I just think it's wonderful that there's, things happening in Vancouver because my grandmother used to live there. I used to go there all the time and, it's a lovely place, but it's just, a vibrant scene is happening there, which is fantastic.
It is. It's definitely growing for sure. I mean, there's a lot of filming that goes on here, for Hollywood movies and everything like that. So, I mean, I think it's impossible for it not to grow. Yeah,
of course it always did. It was always sort of, used as filming for, the X-Files and all that sort of stuff. I can't imagine a vibrant film community ever starting out in Trail. So I think I escaped handily. But
I would agree. Kudos.
Yes.
We have a lady here in Kansas City who just made a short horror film that she's kind of shopping around called Call Girl, and I haven't seen it yet, but I know it has. I think Tristan Risk is the main
She is,
person
and
in it.
It's actually in my inbox, so I guess I should watch that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Wow.
I'd be curious to know what you thought of it, because she's kind of a media friend. I mean, she's an online friend of mine.
I love Tristan, so...
Oh, yeah, she's fabulous. It's because I used to be in I sort of called it a burlesque troupe, but we did all sorts of stuff in the 80s. It was music, robotics, dancing, crazy costumes, and she, we got friendly on Twitter, and she happened to look at some of my old videos on YouTube and just loved what we did. We were just so weird. I mean, we were almost too weird, unfortunately. Too weird for success, but monetary success, but we certainly got around enough. And, that's why we sort of had very interested in what she's doing now and what I used to do in that field. So, it's interesting to see what's happening with, and not everything has to be based in Hollywood. And that's why it was very exciting when I came over to the UK in the late 70s, I'm afraid. But, it was a very exciting place to be, especially during the 80s and in the music industry, and then going back into acting and then ending up, playing, as my dear friend Janice, who's from Glasgow, says, playing a sucky monster. We're doing that much sucking in Hellraiser, but so there's a bit of a journey there, but
definitely. Well, that can lead us into our first questions. Actually, playing a yucky monster. So our Sci-Fi Honey is curious as to how you got involved in the Hellraiser series.
Well, it's funny because I was just looking at your rundown of honeys that you have, and it's so wonderful because they're all part of me. I love revenge. I love sci-fi. I love all this sort of stuff. I'm working on a zombie script, so, it's wonderful. How did I get involved in Hellraiser? I went for the audition and got the part. I know this doesn't sound very romantic, but I think
that's crazy.
I think a lot of people feel that and certainly with the rest of the cast, Doug knew Clive Barker from sort of elementary school, and Nico, Vince, and Simon Bamford were involved with his theater company, as was Doug. And so there was a long line of knowing each other and stuff like that. But unfortunately, the first female Cenobite, Grace Kirby, wasn't unfortunate that she was Clive's cousin, but after she did the part, I gather she didn't like the makeup process and didn't want to do the part again, so they had to recast. And I totally understand her feelings because it was pretty grueling, but nothing compared to what Ken Cranham had to do. He was under the makeup artist's gentle fingers for 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think my reasoning is that why was I called for this? That a lot of people at the time felt that mime artists, because I was a classically trained mime artist at the time, were better suited to doing prosthetic makeup work. They were more patient, which, of course, unfortunately is not the case with me. But before that, I'd gone through a 2-week audition process for Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan of the Apes. Do you remember that rather dismal film with Christopher Lambert as Tarzan?
Oh my goodness! No,
I
have avoided all the Tarzans.
We did workshops, and we met the producer, who's very famous. His name has escaped me, and we had to do ape workshops because we were going to be in the costumes. And out of 20 people, only one person made it through to be an ape in Kenya in a furry costume, and I was very grateful that I was that one person. But, they just said, mime artists, they did the apes in 2001 and the apes in this, and not that I'm an ape specialist, but I figured that's one of the reasons I was called in. I can't imagine why. Or maybe my dimensions fit the costume, or I just who knows.
Well, but, I think it's true today that mime artists or mime skills are something that suit performers and creature performers do have in their repertoire. So I think that's totally fair.
Well, I think Andy, forgive me if I don't get his last name right,
Circus.
Andy Circus?
Yeah.
He's great.
So much, and he's very, very much a trained movement artist. And
I think he's getting ready to. Isn't he getting ready to? I believe he's getting ready to direct something like kind of big. I don't remember what it is, but I
seem to remember something like that too. He's obviously wonderful, and a lot of the movement training does help. I think because especially with mime, the what's the word? The discipline,
like
is
the motion capture stuff.
No, not necessarily that. It's stillness. With dance, it's movement, and I had both training. So, but with mime, it's all about keeping it almost as small as you can, and yet expressing it in a very fluid way and stuff. So I think it is, maybe that was one of the reasons. I don't know. When I went for the audition, and I nearly didn't go because I thought I was going up for the Chatter, and he scared me too much in the first film. Yes. Horror actress admits to being scared in a horror movie. But I just thought, I don't want to play that part. It was too icky. And I've done mask work, and I'm a bit claustrophobic, and I thought, but then it's the female Cenobite. I thought, I could just about stand doing that. And I went to meet Tony Randall, and he said, well, does anybody know, he sort of cast around, what does the word Cenobite mean? I think it's a word that that Clive made up. And I said, oh, no, it means a member of an order. I looked it up. And he said, no, I think Clive made it up. And his assistant went to look it up in the dictionary, and she said, Barbie's right, you're wrong. So he probably, out of revenge, gave me the part. But, no, it's funny because I don't actually remember that much. But obviously it was weeks and weeks of makeup tests and costume. I am convinced that it was Grace's costume I was in, but according to Nico Vince, all the costumes were burned after the first movie or destroyed, which I find hard to believe. But
sometimes that does happen.
It was sort of, you got laced into this leather outfit, and all the makeup was designed to fit my face. It was a new design for the female Cenobite. Although the differences are very slight, you could still see. And I don't have the little creepy bits of hair that she had on the top of her head. I always thought was one of the more disturbing bits of her makeup. So that's a very unmysterious way of how I got the part.
That's so funny. I always wonder about those kinds of things because it's such a unique role, and the movie itself is so unique. Would you go to an audition knowing what you're trying out for or not? Because I know actors who've gone to audition for things, and they have no idea what they're auditioning for.
Well, it's interesting. Well, I've been to a few things that were pretty, epic. Unfortunately, all of them had numbers after the title. But I did get Death Wish 3, which was fabulous. But I also went up for the part of Lady Marine in Aliens. Now, if you sort of met me in person, you would just laugh hysterically because but the reason I went up is I had actually martial arts training. I was a blue belt in Kung Fu, and I also was, trained in saber, and at that, saber fencing. And at that time, I was actually even thinking about going into, stunt work, which of course I would have been terrible at. But I walked in wearing stilettos and fishnets in this multicolored outfit, and the casting director looked at me like, Lady Marine, not really what we're looking for. She said, yeah, we're going to send you to boot camp. And I just went, oh, no, really? It's just like I almost ran out of that one. So, oh, dear. But, I think that certainly, I'd heard of Hellraiser, and I had seen the first film, and that's why I almost didn't go to the audition, because the first film made such a huge impression on me, and very disturbing. And then a dear friend of mine said, "No, go on. You must go. They'll be writing books about you in 20 years. Barbie Wilde, Queen of the B movies," which of course I'd like to think Hellraiser is a bit more than a B movie, but it's a cult horror movie. Mm-hmm. And, even, especially in America, I think, I never realized the scope of the Hellraiser franchise until I went to the States and met some fans. And it's wonderful to see, because it is such a unique and unusual mythology that Clive created.
Absolutely.
And even he hates the word mythology. He thinks that's, it's just a story, but it is a mythology. And people take their lament configurations very seriously.
I absolutely agree.
And I'm very grateful that I got the part because it's quite wonderful. And as I said, if I had just been known as the girl who taught a little hand puppet called Sooty to be a robot on TV, or danced with the comedians Morgan and Wise as a little female mannequin, and I don't think I would have gotten the reviews for the book that I have done, because I played a horrible, honestly, it was tough enough actually getting the reviews I've managed to get, because a lot of people, frankly, I don't think take actresses very seriously, especially if they cross over into writing. So, but I'm very, luckily, horror folks have been very loyal, and they've read the book. Fangoria, Rumor, you guys, and it's wonderful to see. But as Gary said, I'd just been that little girl who danced on stage with Gary Newman, I don't think I would have.
Oh my gosh, she was just here too. I think it helps too, Barbie, don't you think it helps that your book is in kind of that same vein, so to speak? I mean, it's not like you went off and wrote some chick lit romance where you're trying to get people to take you seriously in that context. I mean, it helps that this is kind of your world of it.
Well, it's interesting because I wrote the book because I'm interested in the criminal mind and psychology. And, you know, looking at the definition of horror, yes, it is a book that is a horror novel, I suppose. But to me, it was a crime story. And I've always been interested in the criminal mind because I am such a wimp that I could never imagine doing what a psychopath would do. I'm far too empathic, and I worry about what people think. And so, you know, creating a character like Michael Friday was a very interesting journey for me as a person, not only just as a writer, to try and get into somebody that's so opposite what I am, into his head. But, yeah, I suppose it is. It is a horror story in the same way that, you know, you would read, like, say, American Psycho and think that's a horror story. But what I wanted to do was to make it as realistic as possible, which I suppose is horrible. I mean, there's no more horrible creature on this planet, really, than man. I mean, the things we do to each other is unbelievable. So, you know, I say lions don't play tennis, and all these things that, you know, you look at the animal kingdom, and yes, there is cruelty, but humans seem to, you know, bubble up a kind of special cruelty of their own. So yes, I guess it is horror, and I suppose if I have written a children's story, but it's got a little dog who shrinks and has to fight dust mites in carpet, but it's unpublished.
I think I'm way more scared by books that explore what humans do to each other than any kind of, you know, vampires, zombies, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by human behavior, and even when I was a little kid, I used to read Sherlock Holmes stories. My mother despaired because my dad was giving me sci-fi books and, you know, all this stuff that I should have been reading little girls' books. But I was reading Sherlock Holmes stories, and it was Moriarty who captured my imagination. You know, I loved Sherlock Holmes, but I even invented this backstory for the professor that, he lost his wife and he went mad with grief, and that's why he turned to crime, you know. And I thought, what's his, I need to know why. Why is he like this? And when I read my first, sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh no, when I read the first book about, which was Colin Wilson's The Order of the Assassins, and came across this phenomena, which, you know, this was many, many years ago, of course, called the serial killer. I just thought, whoa, I really wanted to know the why. And that's, again, why I wrote the book. I'm probably getting ahead of myself here, but...
well, no, we can talk about the book. I would love to talk about the book. Do you read a lot of, are there authors you particularly like, or do you read a lot of true crime books?
Yes. I think Anne Rule, is it? A Stranger Beside Me.
Yeah.
Boy, that was supremely wonderful and creepy. And that was, of course, her. You know, I've read a lot of other books about it. And there was a book, I can't remember who it was by, but it was called Son. And it's about this guy who was this notorious rapist in Spokane, Washington, where I grew up. Right? I think little Spokane gets a name check in the book. And, you know, he was never caught, and he was eventually caught, but he was a pure psychopath. And that was like one of the first books I read about psychopaths, and I went, whoa, that's a very frightening idea. I read, you know, in preparation for the book, I read tons of, you know, true crime books, biographies of serial killers, forensic psychology texts. And there's a wonderful book, it's very gruesome, called The Practical Guide to Homicide Detection. It's a textbook for detectives, and that's fascinating.
That sounds, I'm going to add that to my list.
Yeah, complete with horrific, you know,
oh my gosh,
crime scene photographs.
I wanted to ask you about Michael Friday because it seems like right away, like in the very first few pages, you're kind of dropped right into, you know, he's already kind of on the path that he's going to eventually be on. And I didn't know if you had given any thought to giving the reader more backstory into his life, or did you want to kick it off with the car accident just as kind of a quick get-go?
I felt it was almost like I was thinking about a film script when I was writing it. So to me, that's like the first scene, you know, and it's something that slams you right into his life halfway through. I think I've read a lot of books about writing scripts because I'm writing a couple of them at the moment, and it is this idea, always start halfway through the scene or something. And you do get bits about his life and his mother. Oh, my God.
Right.
And, you know, I drop in backstory as you get to know him. But I didn't want to make him a man of mystery, but I just wanted to start the book with a scene, because so much of the book is him just like playing solitaire and going nuts, and I just thought it would be an exciting beginning, and then you find out a little bit more about his mental processes, and then what takes them over, if you like, his spiral. Or
so is the accident? My question had to do with. I have a question about like head injury. I didn't know if the path that he was on, if he was going to become a killer anyway, or if the car accident, maybe set something off in his brain.
Well,
you're very specific about mentioning that he didn't have these weird fantasies. He didn't have these dark fantasies and stuff before the accident, and he wasn't so hypersexual. And so I wondered how the accident.
Well, there is this bit where he does mention when he's a young man that he was driving around with ropes in the back of his car and stuff like that, which actually is kind of I've read some really strange writings of serial killers, and that was, you know, there's some people who do that and other people who don't go on to make that leap, obviously, but, you know, it's this idea of capturing a woman, you know, because they haven't, you know, he did have thoughts like that, but I think once the car accident happened, you know, he had a bit of front temporal lobe damage, and that gets rid of your impulse control, which is mentioned in the book. And I was fascinated about that as well, because a lot of people do have immense character changes after things like car accidents, head injuries. Fred West, who was a very notorious serial killer here in the UK, and with his wife, he actually was in a motorcycle accident, and then he fell off a fire escape onto his head, and then he hit his head again. And I'm just like reading all this, going, didn't anybody sort of ask Fred, like, do you have headaches? Is that why you go out and capture girls and bring them back and torture them? You know, you know, those kind of head traumas are going to make some sort of dent in your personality. Of course, I fell on the top of my head when I was playing on the monkey bars on my swing set when I was kid. It could have had something to do with the way I write books.
Well, I'm glad you kept it fictional. That was nice of you. Thank you for not turning into a serial killer. No, I could never do that. No. I get worried when I kill spiders, but, you know, sometimes they just have to die because they get into my space. And, yeah, that's another phobia. But, yeah, I did want to say there was a point when I was trying to get the book published, and I'd done an interview with Paul Kane, who's a writer of my acquaintance, and he's written a book called The Hellraiser Films and Their Legacy, which is the Bible of Hellraiser, basically. And Clive has called him the Hellraiser expert. And he said, listen, why don't you contribute a short story to this anthology I'm putting together called Hellbound Hearts? And, you know, I said, but I don't write horror, I write crime. He said, no, give it a go. You know, because it's neat because you play the female Cenobite and you can put a spin on it. So I read The Hellbound Heart again, the novella on which Hellraiser is based. And have you guys read that book? Mm-hmm. It's wonderful. I love it. It's just, I love the way Clive writes. But it was interesting that the lead Cenobite in the book is female. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. So I wrote a story
about that, and that was my first horror, what I consider my first horror story, which was about the making of a female Cenobite. Mm-hmm. But I didn't really consider myself a horror writer until I'd finished, the Venus Complex. But it wasn't easy getting it published until I found someone who understood me in Comet Press. So, but it's interesting that edgy writers, I don't want to sound, like I'm complaining, but it's a lot easier for men to make those inroads and stuff. And it's almost like it's difficult for women sometimes to get their work noticed, I think. Especially if you're
That doesn't sound like a complaint. That just sounds like honesty.
Yeah. And we feel you on that one. So
I'm trying to be very careful here because I have a lot of male writers who are friends, and I like them very much. And wow, why does there have to be a woman in Horror Recognition Month?
Oh.
And I go, well, sometimes it's just nice to celebrate what we might have achieved and stuff, and it's still a boys' game. And if you don't know that, then of course, but the boys don't see that because they're out there making the movies, and and that's why it's so wonderful when I see people like the Oscar twins going out there and doing stuff and just borrowing money for their dad or something to make their first feature, just so they can say, hey, we can do it. And I know a lot of female filmmakers are doing that, and but as Catherine Bigelow said, well, I can't change my gender, and I'm not going to stop making films, so you have to keep on. But it's I don't quite know what the point I'm trying to make, but just to explain why the book took a little bit longer to publish than I'd hoped. So,
do you have any sense of if your readers are more men or women? Have you been able to establish that?
Well, actually, it seems like a pretty good mix, actually. I've actually been surprised at the positive reviews I've gotten from women. Some of them are obviously going to be creeped out, but it's a lot of women have liked the book, and I've seen, and almost rooting for it in some obscene way. But it's, to me, like I said, it was very much an exercise in really exploring the sexual mindscapes and motivations of somebody who is a regular guy, but through a series of problems, which we could all go through, if you're unlucky enough, turns to that kind of gratification and murder, and, he thinks it's a great idea what he's doing. Other people would say, oh, my God, why don't you just go to a dating website or something? I know a friend of mine said, why don't you call it Dating by Murder? And I thought, oh, that's a good title.
That's a good title. That is a good title. Well, I think when he's talking about, when he's watching TV, and, I honestly, it's disturbing because you're kind of like, hey, this Michael Friday makes some valid points about the state of the world and, TV and politics and that sort of thing, but then he just goes a little farther than maybe the average complainer.
Well, I think he's got so much rage against. It's not like he's necessarily a misogynist or any of that. His issues with his mother, his wife, his dead wife, all these kind of things. But it is the rage thing. I remember watching something on television, and it made me so angry at the injustice of it, at the stupidity of it, of, all these things that go on every day. And I thought, well, if I was that character, how would I synthesize that? If that bullshit can go on, the murder, the horror, the war, the injustice, what I'm doing is tiny stuff. What our nations do, what our presidents do, what our prime ministers do. 100,000 people get snuffed in 6 months of bombardment somewhere, and it's all just collateral damage. And there are people who ordered those people to be snuffed out are walking around. I'm not trying to get too political here, but there's a quote by a French philosopher called, "You kill one person, you're a murderer. You kill a nation, you're a leader, and if you kill everyone, you're God." very bad. But it is all a matter of degree. And, I mean, taking it from his viewpoint, from his psychopathic viewpoint, where you don't have empathy for anybody. And I think there are a lot of them walking around. I mean, there's a wonderful doctor who's based in Vancouver, I think, William Hare. He wrote, a very, very good book about psychopathy, Without Conscience. Have you heard of it?
No.
Yeah, it's really worth it. It's a very slim novel. He was the one who came up with, or I don't know if he came up with the psychopathy checklist. It's very interesting to check your friends against this list.
Yeah, that's true. But what did you say it was called? Without Conscience? I'm going to look that up right now. Without Conscience, and I think it's either Thomas or William Hare. And
Robert D. Hare.
Robert D. Hare, thank you. And he says there's about 150,000 psychopaths walking around in the United States as we speak. But, only a few of them are serial killers. Most of them are on Wall Street, or they're doctors or nurses, or, they just lack the, empathy with other humans. But, like I said... That's disturbing. Yeah, it is. And it's best to keep out of their way. Well, I know I felt badly for the women that came across Michael Friday. They didn't make out too well. I know. And it's difficult when you're writing a book, but I just have to feel... one of the things is that people have asked is, why did you decide to write it in a diary format? Oh, that was one of my questions. There you go. Oh. Well, it's even more disturbing because you're stuck in his head. But that's what I wanted you to see. Because I've read tons of fictional books about serial killers. And some of them are preposterous, and some of them are artful, and some of them are quite wonderful. I think one of the best ones was Red Dragon, because you got some kind of backstory about what Francis Dolarhyde was going through and why he did things he did. That's what interested me. I started out the book in the third person, writing from the viewpoint of the plucky female forensic psychologist that she tracked down a serial killer. And I just thought, this is like every other book I've read, or something like it. I wanted to do something different. And it is, I suppose, a controversial choice, and a lot of people have not liked it, found it too disturbing to be stuck in his head and see what goes on, and see how he views the world through, those eyes. But it's just, I thought, well, I could be with a bunch of other people, I could do something that I think is a bit different. So I went for that. And it's definitely more disturbing. Well, I guess that's good. That's good, I guess, But it's the book I wanted to write, and it's the subject I wanted to explore. So, but, writing as a woman, it is conflicting. But just keeping true to your character it's in some ways you have to like them, and in other ways you're thinking, this is repellent. But, I wondered if you had any readers that kind of gave you the creeps, like maybe a male reader who was especially excited about Michael's exploits. I have not had anything like that, except one time this guy on Twitter got a bit excited and got a bit drunk, and I went, whoa, you're going to have to delete that now, or I will block you. And he said, I'm so sorry. Whoa, gee. But, I'm surprised, actually, because most of the time, people will either say, oh, my God, this is too disturbing, or, whatever. But I haven't gotten anything creepy, which is interesting. I mean, I don't know whether it's because maybe they're, I know this sounds silly because, you see my picture on Facebook. I'm just this little blonde person. But, I still play the female Cenobite. So maybe they think I'll rip their souls apart if they get those.
Well, I think it's also different, too, because you're a woman.
It's just like,
That's funny.
I will rip your soul apart. So, that could be it, but
I think it's very different too. I mean, you're a female writer. It's not like these guys are going to come up to you and be like, high five, man, I've always wanted to do that.
Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
So
exactly. That's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah,
it's going to take a very special kind of creep.
It has to be from the female serial killer viewpoint, and so women can feel comfortable at but somebody once said, "Why didn't you write a book about a female serial killer?" And I just felt, again, trying to be as faithful to reality as possible. There aren't that many of them out there.
No, there aren't. I think Eileen Wuornos is the only confirmed female serial killer. But I mean,
there
Rose
was one woman who was murdering other women and stealing their identities and stuff. Somebody, it's very interesting. She dumped somebody in a canal near Naples, Florida, and her face was erased or something. And it was like, whoa. But she actually committed suicide before they even got to know how many people she killed. And, of course, there's always the combo killer, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley.
And I mean, Rose West was
embarrassingly
an
that
awful,
Canadian
awful
couple.
woman, too.
But you know that pretty much that if the woman hadn't met that guy and gotten into that particular dynamic, she never would have done that kind of stuff. So, and then I don't know, Eileen Wuornos is, I know, having read a lot about her, I felt very, very sorry for her horrible, horrible upbringing. It doesn't, forgive her crimes or anything like that, but, if she said that she was justified in killing these guys.
Oh, absolutely.
So I don't know. It's just she was a hard luck lady, and I felt very sorry for her in many ways. I feel sorry for her victims as well, but no one deserves to die like that. But I don't know. I think there's some sort of untold story there, or there is a told story, but, it's just, I feel more pity for her than anything else. So again, that's the thing. But there are female psychopaths out there, so that could be the next.
The next installment.
I figured you were going to write another one and have Michael kind of meet his match.
Well, you see, that's kind of a delicious thought, isn't it? Or they could go off and have babies and make a little baby psychopath.
Well, you left it pretty open at the end, so I wondered if you had thought about writing more about Michael Friday, or if you were going to move on to a new character.
I wanted to leave it open, absolutely, because most of them do get away with it. They just move to a different state, and, unless their details get fed into ViCap, you're not going to catch them. Although they have been more successful at catching serial killers now because of DNA and they caught the Green River Killer. And, they eventually caught Ted Bundy, of course. But, yeah, I wanted to keep it open. I think writing the book kind of sort of, I don't want to say sucked me dry. That sounds terrible. But, it took a lot out of me as far as that character is concerned. That everybody, is it going to be a sequel, And I think, okay, what can you get angry about now? And so I've given it a lot of thought. And, of course, I promised that, to the people who like the book, absolutely, I will be writing something. But at the moment, I'm working on other projects. So I think I probably will have to write something. But it would be nice if he did meet his match somehow. Because we crave justice, don't we? We crave fairness.
Maybe you could revisit him as a secondary character in, like, a short story at a later date from a female point of view, and then that would be just kind of like a little Easter egg for those of us that have read The Venus Complex.
That's a wonderful idea, because I'm going to hopefully put out a collection of all my horror short stories, and that would be a really nice, Easter egg, on top, cherry on top, to include something like that. Exactly. Yeah, thank you.
My pleasure. I'm going to look forward to reading that.
Because I've written about 9 short stories now, and that's good enough for a little collection. And because a lot of them are in anthologies that, people have read, but I don't know how many people have read. You never know when you put out things in anthologies, what the sales figures are. Really, you never hear from people again about how they've done. But I've been lucky enough to get a couple published in Gore Zone, Fangoria's Gore Zone. My zombies story was put in Gore Zone 29, and then my sort of the sequel to the Cenobite Sister Felice story is in Gore Zone 30. So that hopefully gets more people interested in my writing, because that's a subscription magazine from Fangoria, which has a lot of really bougie things in it. They have to
that's probably a fun way for people to sample. I mean, that's exactly why they do it. People sample their work, and I mean, I like short stories, and I would imagine for you it's probably a little bit less emotionally draining to write a short story about this kind of thing than a whole book inside his head.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, all my stories are very difficult to get out, because they all have, well, I mean, one of the writers said I write from a fiercely feminine viewpoint, or feminist viewpoint. I don't know about that. I just write what I've got in my head. But one story is called Uranophobia, and it's about, I wanted to write a story about, it was in an anthology called Phobophobia, and my fear is home invasion. And I think there's nothing scary than being in your house where you're supposed to be safe and knowing people are trying to get in and they want to kill you or something. But I was given the letter U, and I thought there is no actually phobia for home invasion, which I find extraordinary. So I wrote a story about a woman who's afraid of Uranus, the god of sky, and so she ends up getting a safe room in her basement because she never wants to go out, and some guys break in. And she exacts her hideous revenge. And so it was like, it was a very strong female, very conflicted and very screwed up female character, but in the end she gets her revenge, which is excellent. So that's, again, it took a lot. And when I finished the story, I gave it to my partner to read, and he said, "You're ending it like that?" Yeah, is that okay? She puts the bodies in, she's going to dump them in the lake and get stuff. No, go back. That's a bogus ending. Oh, wow, Taskmaster. So I had to come back with a much better ending, which is really weird and fucked up. So that's, again, but it takes a lot out of me. So I think, I don't know, that sounds really, I hope that doesn't sound lame. It's just I try to put a lot into it, even if it's a short story. And it is wonderful, short stories, because, I'm developing one of them, the zombie story, into a screenplay. And it gives you more legroom, if you know what I mean, to, if you have a basic thing that's only about 6,000 words or 5,000 words, you can develop it much better into a screenplay than if you try to adapt a whole book.
Well, I know that they really struggled when they were adapting World War Z. I don't know if you saw that movie, but I loved the book and I loved the movie, but they were completely different. I mean, it was not really adaptable. It had a germ of a cool idea, but because it was told in sort of like journalistic reports, it didn't really lend itself to a screenplay, and I think they had to scrap what they had and start all over.
Oh, right. I did not read the book. I saw the movie, and I thought, well, this is science fiction. I didn't feel horrified or scared by it.
No.
Yeah,
it was fun. Did you like it?
Yeah, I did, actually. I mean, a lot of people were complaining about it, but I thought, it just did what it said on the pack, as
exactly.
In the UK. I mean, I'm not that into zombies at all. I know you've got a zombie honey, but that's when I was given, again, another anthology. I was given Z. I was just going, it's only Chinese dragons, so is Z. And, again, my partner, bless him, said, well, why don't you write a zombie story? And I said, well, I'm not really interested in zombies. He said, well, you have your own unique voice, don't you? Mm-hmm. And that's why I wrote Zulu Zombies. And it starts in, did you ever see the movie with Michael Caine? Zulu.
Yes.
Which movie?
Zulu.
It's called Zulu?
Yes.
And it's
no, I've never seen it. Have you, Kat?
Yes, I have. I love Michael Caine.
It's his first big part, and he's adorable. But actually, if you watch that film, it's Stanley Baker who's just the hunk in that. Wow. But anyway, they're manning this little station. They've got about 150 soldiers, and it's after this really big battle where the Zulus beat the English really badly. And they're all just waiting to get rescued. And then they hear the Zulus coming, and they're coming to kill them all. And there are about, About 4,000 Zulus and 150 Brits. And in the end, the Zulus went away, but they managed to defend themselves, and they only lost about 25 men or something. And it was just this idea of Zulu zombies in Milton Keynes, which is this really horrible, it's not a horrible town. People in Milton Keynes might complain. It's a town that's north of London, and how these zombie spirits come to Milton Keynes. And so it's from Yorkshire to Milton Keynes. And you just... sounds really absurd, doesn't it? But it's really gory, disgusting story. And and it's got zombie sex in it. Of course, it's Barbie Wilde. It has to have
sex.
So that's what I'm working on at the moment. Because you never see zombies have zombie sex in movies, do you?
There's one zombie movie that my husband keeps talking about because I think it disturbed him a lot. And it was the zombies had devolved to the basic functions. So there was like feeding and fucking and something else. So it was like the zombie would run and catch you and basically fuck you to death.
Oh, what movie is that? Remind me to avoid it.
I know, right? I totally can't remember the title, and neither can he, but he just keeps talking about this zombie sex. I'm like, you need to stop.
Oh, God. Well, there's not a lot of zombie sex in mine,
Just a minimum recommended amount, yes.
Exactly.
Just enough.
It's on a train, too, so it's sort of, it's just...
Barbie, I love that you're this, adorable little pixie with all these disgusting things just bubbling out of you. It's really wonderful.
Well, I blame... it's when I was reading the little bios, and it's like Sci-Fi Honey, and I thought, oh, gosh, it was all those movies I watched with my big brother, making me watch the creature features when I was a kid, and it made me so paranoid and weird, and because I thought there was like invaders from Mars in the basement, and every time my dad came up, I had to check the back of his neck to see if he'd been drilled by Martian. And when I mentioned this to him decades later, he said, I always wondered why you used to grab at the back of my shirt when I came up from the basement. Because I was like a tiny little kid, and he was 6'2", and he noticed. How embarrassing.
That's lovely.
No. I still look under the bed. If my husband's out of town, I look under the bed before I go to sleep, which is absurd.
For pods from not the day the Earth stood still. Pods from Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Do you remember the pods? They put them under their own children's beds. All those films were guaranteed to make you completely paranoid about your parents.
That's true.
And so I'm in the bed for spiders, under the bed for pods, and in the closet for lurking boogeymen, serial killers, whatever. So
there's a reason that pops up so much. Yeah, definitely.
So that was my childhood, and also it was a very paranoid time. I was growing up in 60s America. I mean, we were taught to duck and cover under the desk in case the Russians dropped bombs on us. I used to beg my dad to build a bomb shelter in the back garden, and he said, "What's the point? It would take 30 years for the radiation to die down. We'd die of starvation." Thanks, Dad.
Thanks, Dad. Wow. I like the practicality.
I feel much better now. Thank you.
Yeah, you couldn't. I used to not sleep at night, thinking I could hear the planes coming with the bombs. I mean, that was, So that kind of childhood, you have the sunny face, but inside it's like a little pit of worms.
Oh yeah.
And
no, I think
really
that's.
Nice person,
I think that's really good.
Well, it is.
Oh, I was just going to ask about your new projects that you're working on, actually.
Which one? Well, I told you about the Zulus.
Yes, but Bad Medicine. I did a little bit of digging on Bad Medicine, which is going to be a plan for your return to acting.
Yes. Well, very strange. This year, after, a hiatus of 16 years, I mean, how actors say, especially in England, they're always so genteel about it, acting left me, darling.
Uh-oh.
The phone stopped ringing, and, I went into TV presenting, and then I went into casting, which is really demoralizing if you still have hopes of acting, because, I could go for this part, and your partner goes, no, you can't. Oh, okay.
Okay.
And, and then it was into writings and stuff like that. So, but this year, I got offered 3 different projects, and I went, whoa, what's going on? And one has to be rewritten and stuff, and in the end, there might not be a part for me in it. The second one, where I don't want to go into too many details, but I didn't feel it was right for me.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to play an 80-year-old woman, and I'd have to speak English. And I mean, it'd be more prosthetics and stuff, or not, depending on how I felt that morning. But also, it's like I'm fairly crap at doing English accents. I'm pretty terrible doing any accents whatsoever. So I just thought, I didn't want to play an English person. But this came up, and I read the script, and I went, oh my God, this is amazing. And then I read it out loud with my partner, and he just said, wow. And he doesn't really like horror, and he just said, we both said, this is such a unique and wonderful and imaginative script. And I was a bit concerned because I'm sort of it's a portmanteau or anthology film, and I'm playing an unconventional therapist, and I'm getting the stories from each of these 5 different people. Trying to help them. And so I'm the sort of Peter Cushing character with the tarot cards, I'm the sort of the wraparound story person. And I thought, whoa, it's kind of, a key part after so long. And then, I thought about it, and I thought, this is a wonderful part, and I'd love to do it. So this is what's going to happen sometime in October. We're still looking out for funding, and a new campaign is going to be launched because they want to keep themselves completely independent, which I totally respect. And but it's a great script.
So how do you,
very cool.
How do you feel about crowdfunding for films? I would imagine that it would be really hard to get all attached and invested in your character and in the project, and then to have it fail.
Well, I don't know. It's a lot of them do okay. I've got someone I know who's a cellist. The thing, she knows a lot of. She's worked with, Smashing Pumpkins, all these big names, and she needed $15,000 to go and record with the Prague Symphony Orchestra or something. She made an utterly charming film of her walking around L.A. with her giant pink cello case and saying, "I need this money, give it to me," And she got like $20,000, or she got $6,000. She got enough, And the wildly successful stories like Amanda Palmer wanting, I need, $200,000 to my album, and she got $1 million. But for every one of those is, people who want to get like £2,000 to put their play on the fringe theater circuit in the UK, and they get £5 pledged. So, but it is a matter of publicity, and but I mean, now you've got people like Spike Lee crowdfunding films.
Yeah,
and it's almost like, hey, you're a big name.
I know. I don't know how I feel about those things. It feels weird to see someone with a big name asking people for money when, they make hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Anyway, it seems so ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. But, I think that basically these guys have got other means and sources, and crowdfunding is part of it. Mm-hmm. And they hadn't done it before, because the first film they made, which I think was called Ascension, they didn't do crowdfunding. but I think, people have done it with different varying degrees of success. And so we just have to, it will not, if it doesn't work, it's not like that means the project isn't going to come out. It's
right.
going to take longer to come out. So there are all sorts of ways of doing it. Because this has got to come out because it's too brilliant not to. But, sometimes I worry a little bit because it's so interesting and unique, and the vision is so, I haven't seen anything like this before, that you sort of worry, oh no, is it going to be too unusual? But I'd like to think that originality will find a way out or an up. Although, looking at the current crop of movies coming out, it's good to say. You have to keep. I think one of the things that, as I get older, it's very easy to get discouraged, and you have to keep that youthful enthusiasm about being in the business and saying, okay, I'm writing a script on spec. Most people, professional scriptwriters, don't do that. But it's something I believe in and I love. I love my Zulu zombies and their drool. I want to see them on the big screen. So I continue to write this and do whatever I can to get it out there. And I think and not to give up. And that's important for anything in the arts. It's, never give up, never surrender. That's my advice. It's a line from Galaxy Quest.
I love Galaxy Quest. What a great movie. Yes, of course. By Goldfar's hammer, you will be avenged. It is. But he says that's Tim Allen's character's thing. Never give up. Never surrender. And whenever people ask me advice as a writer or as a filmmaker, whatever, I just say, that's it. That's your theme. Because if you do, they win. And so you've got to fight to get your ideas out there. And it's possible. It's all possible somehow. You just have to make sacrifices and see if you can do it. I mean, a lot of people, I know in the writing business have, jobs that sustain them while they're writing to get their great American or Canadian or British novels out. And it's, you just have to do it. And hopefully one day someone comes along and goes, I think that's brilliant. So.
Well, I think that's actually a really lovely place to end off our call today.
It is. It's
great.
With lovely advice. So, Barbie, don't hang up the phone at all.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you would like to say before we stop? Anyone you'd like to, or any projects you'd like people to watch out for, or anything at all?
I think Bad Medicine. Just keep an eye out on my Facebook page, Barbie Wilde, and author-actress Barbie Wilde at barbiewilde.com, because normally I'm really a bit crap at putting stuff up on my website. It's just so easy on Facebook. But, I'm coming up to some appearances at Texas Frightmare weekend at the beginning of May, and then there's Bazaar AC, and I'm going to make some appearances in the United States this year, so come on down, get your book signed if you want. Photograph signed. And that's it. I think, just keep an eye on my website and you'll see what I'm thinking about doing.
That's wonderful. I'll make sure there's links to that underneath in the description for this when it gets posted so that people can find you. Okay,
brilliant. Well, listen, thank you for having. It's been a delightful chat.
Thank you so much. I could honestly talk to you about serial killers all day. That would be awesome.
Part 2.
I know, right? All right, Barbie. Well, thank you once again so much for coming on to talk to us today. Really, really appreciate your time.
Okay. Well, thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you once again to Barbie Wilde for taking the time to chat with us today on Honey Radio. You can find Honey Radio on Podomatic, on Stitcher, on Fubar, Radio Fubar, on Sunday nights live at 5 p.m. PST, 8 p.m. EST for those of you on the easterly coast. You can also find us on the Wicked Radio Network, of which we are super proud to be a part of. We love those guys. So you can find the Horror Honeys on our website, thehorrorhoneys.com. You can talk to us on Twitter at HorrorHoneys, HorrorHoneys. You can find the Hardcover Honey Jocelyn on Twitter at JBRivard. That's JBRIVARD. And you can connect with all of us via our website. So thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you again soon. Bye!
I love to take my baby to a movie show, so I can try to smooch her while the lights are low. But she won't cuddle to a story of romance. There's only one way I've got a chance. It takes the Batman boy